5 years after the day I broke up with Ethan Hayes, he walked into our college reunion with another woman wearing an engagement ring. I was standing right beside the door. He walked through me, not metaphorically. Ethan's shoulder passed through what was left of my body, like it was moving through cold mist. He did not stop. He did not shiver. He could not know that the girl he had once loved was standing less than a step away. I had been dead for a year. Ethan did not know. The reunion was being held in a private ballroom at a midtown Manhattan hotel, marking 10 years since our class had entered Columbia University. Almost everyone showed up. Doctors, lawyers, people with 2 children, people already divorced. And Ethan, the man who once split a slice of pizza with me because he had only a few dollars left at the end of the month, was now the founder of North Star Systems, a technology company worth billions. He was 33. He had appeared in Forbes. Security waited outside. A driver waited downstairs, and a beautiful woman held his arm. Her name was Isabel Morgan. She was the daughter of an old New York investment family. A diamond on her left ring finger caught nearly everyone's attention. Kevin, our former class representative, laughed. "You finally came. We thought billionaires stopped remembering poor classmates." Ethan gave him a faint smile. "You talk more than you did in college." Kevin turned to Isabel. "And this is?" Ethan introduced her. "Isabel Morgan." He did not need to say more. The ring said the rest. Congratulations spread around the table. I stood nearby, staring at their hands. A ghost was not supposed to feel pressure in her chest, but I did. Maybe death could take a heart without taking the foolish habits the heart had left behind. Nearly an hour passed before someone mentioned me. Speaking of old couples, one woman said, "How many years has it been since anyone saw Evelyn Carter?" I froze. Hearing my own name spoken by the living felt strangely distant. Another classmate laughed. "She's probably too busy flying around meeting rich men." Flying? She became a flight attendant. Atlantic Meridian. Seriously? Lydia, another former classmate, took a sip of wine. I saw her once. She was very sweet to the first-class passengers. She always liked men with money. The job suited her. The table laughed. I was not angry. 5 years ago, I was the one who had made everyone believe I was that kind of woman. I had pursued Ethan for almost a year, then loved him for 3 years. Then, in less than a month, I coldly left him for a wealthy boyfriend who was actually an actor I hired. If I had been one of my own classmates, I probably would have believed the same story. Kevin looked at Ethan. "You still remember Evelyn?" Ethan was holding a glass of whiskey. His fingers tightened around it. I could see the tendons standing out across the back of his hand. "Isabel saw it too," Ethan said. "That was a long time ago." Kevin kept pushing. "You really forgot her?" Ethan lifted his glass. "What's there to remember?" The table laughed again. I laughed too. "That's right," I said, even though he could not hear me. "Forget me." Then Ethan suddenly took Isabel's hand. "There's something we haven't told everyone." The room quieted. "We're having the wedding next month. If you're free, come." Congratulations immediately filled the room. I lowered my head. Next month? That soon. I had been dead for 1 year. He was getting married. Maybe that was exactly how it should be. I had wanted him to keep living. I just had not expected watching him do it to hurt so much. Someone opened our old class group chat. Evelyn is still in here. Her avatar hasn't changed in forever. It's gray now. At least a year. The laughter softened. My profile picture was a photograph of the sky taken through an airplane window. After I died, Hannah had memorialized my account. Not everyone could see the notice. To people who had not contacted me in years, the account simply looked gray and inactive. Someone joked, "Don't tell me something really happened to her." Kevin immediately said, "Don't say that." But I was watching Ethan. His glass stopped halfway to his mouth. He asked, "Does anyone still have her number?" Nobody answered. Isabel said softly, "Ethan." He put his glass down. I was just asking, but I knew. He was still terrible at lying. That night, after the reunion ended, I wandered through the city for a long time before returning to the small apartment in Queens where I had once lived. The lights were on. Hannah Lee, my best friend, was mopping the floor. She still came once a month, not because the apartment needed cleaning. The lease had passed into my estate, and my belongings were still waiting to be sorted. Hannah simply had not been able to empty the place. The first thing she did every month was charge my old phone. When I was still alive, I had once asked, "If I die, why would you keep my phone?" Hannah had said, "So I can keep insulting you in the group chat." I never expected her to actually keep it. She plugged it in. The screen lit up. Messages from the class group appeared. A picture of Ethan and Isabel. The wedding announcement. Hannah stared for a long time, then crouched down and cried. She opened my photo album, ran her thumb over a picture of me smiling on an airplane. "Idiot," she whispered. "He's getting married. Why are you still remembering him after you're dead?" I sat beside her. "I don't know." Hannah could not hear. She had a 6-year-old daughter named Mia, whom everyone in the family called Bunny. Mia had congenital heart disease. She needed long-term monitoring and had already undergone 2 procedures. Before I died, I sold some of the jewelry my mother had left me and combined it with what remained of my savings after treatment to create a small medical trust for Mia. It was not enough to perform miracles in the American healthcare system, but it helped Hannah cover deductibles, travel expenses, and other out-of-pocket costs. That night, Hannah took my phone home. I followed her. I had already learned something strange about being dead. I could not simply go anywhere by thinking about it. I was usually pulled toward places tied strongly to my memories, or toward people who were remembering me intensely. Hannah often pulled me close because she thought about me so much. Ethan had been outside my reach for almost a year, until the reunion. From the moment he stared at my grayed-out avatar, I felt something thin reconnect between us. I did not understand it. Just before dawn, my old phone received a news notification. Hannah was asleep. I drifted toward the screen. The headline read, "North Star founder Ethan Hayes involved in late-night car accident." I went cold. The report said Ethan's Mercedes had lost control on a wet stretch near the West Side Highway and struck a barrier. No one else was injured. I thought of him instantly. The invisible thread between us tightened. Hannah's bedroom vanished. A moment later, I was at the scene. Ethan was sitting at the side of the road. His left arm had a deep cut from broken glass. There was no driver in the car. I later learned Ethan had chosen to drive himself after the reunion because he did not want his driver waiting late. Traffic footage showed an SUV changing lanes abruptly. Ethan swerved, and his car lost traction on the rain-slicked road. The crash was not intentional. It was not self-destruction. Just one mistake on a night when his mind was clearly somewhere else. Paramedics checked him. He was taken to the emergency department. A CT scan showed no head injury. The cut on his arm was stitched. The doctor recommended several more hours of observation. Ethan stayed. For once, I could breathe even though I no longer needed to. Near dawn, he lay on the hospital bed staring at the ceiling. His phone rested beside him. The class chat was still open. My gray avatar sat motionless at the bottom of the list. He touched my name. There was no number to call, no new profile. Only an account that had been silent for 1 year. I stood beside the bed. "Ethan, don't look for me." He could not hear. 2 days later, he started looking. Ethan had a business trip to Atlanta before flying to Europe. His assistant, Mason, walked into the office holding a tablet. "Atlanta is booked. Delta, seat 1A. Ethan stopped signing documents. "Cancel it." Mason looked up. "Different time? Different airline." "Which one?" Ethan was quiet for several seconds. I stood beside the desk. I already knew the answer. Atlantic Meridian. Mason looked mildly surprised. It was not Ethan's usual airline. He held high status with another carrier, with lounge access, upgrades, and better routes for most of his travel. But Mason only said, "Okay." 2 days later, Ethan boarded his first Atlantic Meridian flight. I followed. Not because I wanted him to find me, only because the strange thread between us had grown strong enough to pull me wherever he went. Ethan sat in first class, but he did not sleep. Every time a flight attendant passed, he looked. Not the way a man studies a woman, the way someone compares a face against memory. After service, he stood, walked through first class, past business class, stopped near the curtain leading toward economy. The purser asked, "Sir, can I help you?" Ethan said, "I just need to walk." He went far enough to see almost the entire cabin crew. I was not there. Of course I wasn't. I had stopped working more than a year before I died. On the return flight, he chose Atlantic Meridian again. Still no me. I stood beside the galley, watching him pass through the exact place where I had once stood hundreds of times. In 3 years as cabin crew, I never saw Ethan. The reason I chose that career was as foolish as most of the choices I made because of him. After we broke up, I thought, successful people travel. Ethan is going to be successful. If I work for a major airline, the probability that I will see him again is at least greater than 0. I was too afraid to call, too afraid to search for him directly. But I still placed myself somewhere we might accidentally cross paths. Hannah used to say, "You dumped him and then chose a career because you hoped to run into him." I said, "That sounds unhealthy, doesn't it?" "Very." "Yeah." I still applied. Life has a cruel sense of humor. For those 3 years, Ethan remained completely loyal to another airline. Now that he was deliberately switching carriers to look for me, I was already gone. After Atlanta, Ethan used Atlantic Meridian for 2 more trips. Someone wrote in our class group chat, "I flew Atlantic Meridian again. Still didn't see Evelyn." Another person tagged Lydia. "Are you sure you didn't remember wrong?" Lydia replied, "I'm sure. I saw her last year on a Boston-New York flight." Last year? Yes. That had been one of my final trips before medical leave. Someone else wrote, "Has anyone noticed Evelyn's avatar has been gray for about a year?" The group went quiet for several minutes. Then someone said, "My friend's account looked like that after she died." Kevin immediately replied, "Don't say that." I watched Ethan. He stood by the windows of his office, phone in hand. His fingers were clenched tightly around it. That afternoon, 3 managers had reports returned for revision, not because they had made major mistakes. Ethan was simply angry at the world. I hovered beside him. "You're scared." I understood. People rarely think of death first. We prefer to imagine that someone changed numbers, moved overseas, got married, stopped wanting contact, anything except the final possibility. Mason entered near the end of the day. The wedding planner sent 5 concepts for the beachfront ceremony. Ethan did not turn around. Blue and white. Sorry? The main colors, blue and white. Mason typed. Flowers? Irises. I froze. Blue irises. My favorite. In college, I once told Ethan that if we ever married, I did not want roses because everyone uses roses. He asked, so what would you use? Irises. They're harder to source. Are you the groom or the florist? He laughed. Fine. Irises. I had never imagined he still remembered. Mason asked, has Ms. Morgan approved that? Ethan was silent. No. Should I send it? Send it. Mason left. I stared at Ethan. Isabel was not someone who had stolen him from me. She and Ethan had started dating about 8 months earlier. Malcolm Hayes, Ethan's grandfather, strongly approved of the Morgan family. The 2 family offices were also involved in a major commercial partnership. From the perspective of elite New York families, the marriage made perfect sense. But Isabel was not stupid. I heard her say to Ethan once after the reunion, if you still want to find Evelyn, say it. Ethan answered, I just want to know how she's doing. That's not an answer. He stayed quiet. Isabel looked at him. I agreed to the engagement because I thought we were both willing to try for an adult marriage. I don't need you to love me the way someone loves at 20, but I do need you to be present. I know. Then if you aren't present, don't drag this out. I liked her from that sentence onward. 2 days after Ethan chose irises, Isabel returned the wedding concept. She changed some menu items. She did not change the flowers. Her only note said, if these are important to you, keep them. She did not ask why. Maybe she already understood that the beach, the colors, and the irises did not come from Ethan suddenly becoming romantic. News of the wedding spread quickly. Hannah saw it on television. Mia, her daughter, was doing homework on the carpet. I stood beside them. Hannah watched the screen for a long time and started crying. Mia ran to her. Mom, why are you crying? I'm okay. Is it Uncle Ethan? The girl had seen old photos of us. Hannah hugged her. Tomorrow, I'm taking you to see someone. Who? Someone very important to Aunt Evelyn. I panicked. Hannah, don't. She could not hear me. The next day, Hannah brought Mia to Ethan's house in Westchester. The house was not a palace, but it was large, gated, protected by security. Mia looked through the entrance. Mom, they have a soccer field. Hannah did not smile. She used the intercom. My name is Hannah Lee. I need to see Ethan Hayes. It's about Evelyn Carter. 5 minutes later, Ethan came outside. No suit, just a gray sweater. He looked at Hannah, then Mia. You're Evelyn's friend? Hannah nodded. I need to talk to you. Ethan gave a bitter laugh. 5 years later? I'm not here to ask for anything. I didn't say you were. Your face did. I knew Hannah. She had genuinely struggled financially. She was raising Mia alone. She had medical debt, but she was fiercely proud. Ethan asked, Did Evelyn send you? Hannah almost answered. I saw her lips tremble. No. Then why are you here? Because I saw the wedding news. What does that have to do with her? Hannah took a breath. I think you should know. At that moment, a loud bark came from the yard. Ethan's mastiff ran toward the gate with a handler. Mia startled and hid behind her mother. Ethan immediately said, "Atlas, down!" The dog stopped. The handler pulled it back. Ethan turned toward security. "Take him inside." I relaxed. Our story already had enough cruelty. I did not need a dog being used to prove how wounded Ethan was. But Mia's fear broke Hannah's concentration. Ethan looked at the child. His voice was still cool. "If you're here to carry a message from Evelyn, tell her she doesn't need to come." Hannah stared at him. "You really think she might?" "I don't care." "You're getting married." "Yes." "Then why did you switch airlines 4 times looking for her?" Ethan's face changed. So did mine. Hannah knew. Maybe someone in the class chat had told her. She said, "If you want to hate her, but don't pretend you don't need to know." Ethan's voice turned cold. "She's the one who left." "I know. She had someone else." Hannah closed her eyes. "You don't know everything." "I don't need to." "Ethan." He turned away. Hannah finally said, "You can relax about one thing. Evelyn will never come ruin your wedding." Ethan stopped. "What does that mean?" Hannah looked at Mia, at Ethan, then at the empty space where I stood. She had promised me in hospice that she would not tell him. That promise was hurting her now. "She won't come." "Why?" Hannah whispered. "Because she can't." Ethan stared at her. Hannah took Mia's hand. "Let's go." "Wait." She did not stop. "Hannah." She kept walking. Ethan stood at the gate for a long time. Then he went back inside. That night, he did not smash glass. He did not turn blood into proof of love. He walked into his study, closed the door, and slammed one fist against the edge of the desk hard enough to split his knuckles. Then he stopped, looked at the blood, and went to get a first aid kit. I stood beside him. "At least you still know pain means stop." An hour later, Malcolm Hayes arrived. No warning. He was 87. White hair. A cane, but a straight back. "I heard Carter's friend came here." Ethan did not ask how he knew. He only looked at him. Malcolm said, "Don't let a woman who hurt you keep destroying your life." Ethan smiled faintly. "Why do you hate her so much?" "She betrayed you." "That's all?" "What else would there be?" Ethan stared at him for a long time, then said, 6 years ago, Carter Holdings collapsed in less than 4 months." Malcolm went still. "There were rumors, someone coordinated creditors, gave evidence to regulators, and blocked every rescue financing attempt. Rumors are cheap. Were you involved?" Malcolm did not answer. That was enough. Ethan stood. "What did you do to the Carter family?" Malcolm said. "I brought things into the light that needed to be seen." "And the rest?" "I do not rescue enemies." Ethan's expression sharpened. "Enemies?" Malcolm realized he had said too much. He stood. "You're getting married. Stop digging into the past. When did you find out Evelyn was Daniel Carter's daughter?" Malcolm looked at him, then turned away. "Get some sleep." He left. I followed him as far as the car. His elderly aide opened the door. Quietly, the man asked, "Will Mr. Ethan keep investigating?" Malcolm sat inside. "Let him." "What about Miss Carter?" Malcolm looked through the dark glass. "She's dead." I felt cold even though I already knew. The aide asked, "Should we tell him?" "No." "Why?" "What would it change?" Malcolm closed his eyes. "He will never know she didn't leave him because of another man. She left because she discovered she loved the grandson of her family's enemy." The car drove away. I stood alone in the driveway. That was where the real story began, not at the reunion, but 6 years earlier, when the names Carter and Hayes finally collided. I was a Carter. Back in college, none of my classmates knew what that meant. They only knew I never seemed short on money. I wore good clothes without showing off labels. I did not stay in the dorms for long. During freshman year, I had a driver for a while before insisting on taking the subway like everyone else. Nobody knew my father, Daniel Carter, was chairman of Carter Global Infrastructure, a family conglomerate that owned warehouses, cold chain facilities, inland ports, and several logistics investment funds across the East Coast. Nobody knew my mother was a trustee of the Carter Family Foundation. And nobody knew that when I was 8, I had been kidnapped on the way home from ballet class. The kidnappers held me for almost 36 hours. My father paid the ransom before the FBI found the house. After that, my family removed nearly every public trace of me. No family profiles, no school directories, no foundation photos. The name Evelyn Carter still existed, but it was never connected publicly to Carter Holdings. So when I entered Columbia, I became ordinary Evelyn Carter. And I met Ethan Reed. That was his mother's last name then. He grew up with Laura Reed in Vermont and came to New York on scholarship. No father, no money, no connections. But Ethan was never someone you could pity. He hated being pitied. He worked as a research assistant, tutored statistics, took freelance coding jobs on weekends. During my first year, I pursued him for almost 10 months. He rejected me 3 times. The first time, I don't have time. The second, I don't like dating. The third, Evelyn, you don't understand me. I asked. Then give me time to understand. He looked at me like he had never met anyone that shameless. Eventually, he agreed to coffee. The next 3 years were the happiest years of my life. No yachts, no private clubs, nothing the Carter family owned. We ate noodles at a tiny place near campus, walked through Riverside Park, argued because Ethan always forgot his scarf. He once said, "One day I'll earn enough money to meet your parents properly." I laughed. "You think my parents care how much money you have?" "No, I care whether I feel worthy." I almost told him the truth about my family many times. But every time I looked at him, I liked that with Ethan I was simply Evelyn. Not Daniel Carter's daughter. Not an heiress. Just a girl who talked too much, liked blue irises, and hated raisins in cookies. Then Malcolm Hayes appeared. Ethan was 27. He had graduated and started a tiny software company with 2 friends, living in an apartment barely large enough for a sofa and a desk. One afternoon, he called me. An old man showed up and said he's my grandfather. I laughed. Scam? There's a DNA test. I went silent. Malcolm told Ethan the truth Laura Reed had hidden all his life. His biological father was Adrian Hayes, Malcolm's only son. Adrian had died 6 years earlier in a car crash on a coastal road in Maine. His legal wife, Caroline, and their 17-year-old son, Marcus, died in the same crash. Marcus had been the heir Malcolm had prepared from childhood. After the accident, the direct Hayes line was essentially gone. Only then did Malcolm revisit old files and search for Ethan. Ethan was Adrian's son outside marriage. Laura had never loved Adrian. Malcolm did not tell Ethan that part at first. He gave him a cleaner version. Adrian and Laura had once had a brief relationship. The family objected. Laura left. Ethan was born and raised under his mother's surname. Now Malcolm wanted Ethan to change his name to Hayes, enter the family trust, and begin learning how to run Hayes Capital and Logistics. Ethan did not agree immediately. He said, "I don't know these people." I told him, "You don't have to decide today." He asked, "If I become Ethan Hayes, will I look different to you?" I smiled. "You'll still be the person who steals all my fries." I did not know that 2 weeks later, the Hayes name would become something I could barely look at. Carter Holdings entered crisis. First came an investigative article about bribery. Then regulators reopened an old case. A bank syndicate withdrew a credit line. 2 funds preparing a refinancing deal suddenly walked away. A major supplier sued. Everything happened too fast. My father said, "Someone is attacking us." I asked who. He would not say. Then my father's private attorney gave me a box of documents. Mr. Carter instructed me that if the situation became uncontrollable, you needed to see this. Inside was the file from a crash 6 years earlier. Adrian Hayes, Caroline Hayes, Marcus Hayes. All 3 died when their SUV went off a coastal road and into the ocean. Adrian's toxicology report showed extremely high levels of opioids and benzodiazepines. I kept reading. There were emails between a fixer named Raymond Cole and an executive who worked for my father. Wire transfers. Messages. My father had wanted to push Adrian out of a major port development deal. Adrian already had a serious substance use problem. Instead of reporting it or staying away, my father used an intermediary to keep him supplied and easier to manipulate. There was no document where my father wrote, "Make him drive and die." But there was evidence that he knew Adrian's addiction was severe and still continued funding the man supplying him. On the day of the crash, Adrian was driving his wife and son home from a weekend trip. He went into withdrawal, then used drugs shortly before getting behind the wheel. He lost control. The SUV went over the road. All 3 died. I sat on the floor of my old apartment for nearly 4 hours. I did not want to believe it. But my father's signature was in the file. Then Malcolm Hayes found me. I still do not know how he learned I had seen the documents. Maybe he monitored everything connected to the Carter investigation. We met in a law firm's conference room. I rushed toward him before security could stop me. "Did you destroy my family?" Malcolm stood still. "Your father destroyed mine first. I asked about you. I gave the evidence to prosecutors." "You pressured creditors?" "I told them what they needed to know." "You blocked the refinancing." "I did not put money into saving the man who harmed my son and grandson." "Why didn't you release the evidence 6 years ago?" Malcolm looked at me. "Because it took me 6 years to build a case strong enough to survive court." I threw the file on the table. My father did not intentionally kill them. He knew Adrian was addicted. I know, and still used the addiction for financial leverage. I could not answer. Malcolm lowered his voice. "Do you think I wanted your parents dead?" I looked up. "My parents are not dead. They were still alive then." Malcolm went quiet. A chill went through me. "Did you want them dead?" "No." "Then what did you want?" Daniel Carter held accountable. I left. 2 days later, my parents died by suicide at their Connecticut home. They left no long dramatic letter, only a short note to me. "We are sorry. None of this is your fault." I hated that sentence. It did not repair anything. I lost my parents. Malcolm lost his son and grandson. Ethan stood in the middle without knowing the whole truth. I returned to New York after the funeral, feeling almost nothing. Ethan came to the chapel. I would not let him into the family room. He texted, "I'm outside. Can I see you? Please." I read every message. I did not answer. Hannah sat beside me. "Let him in." "I can't." Ethan isn't Malcolm. I know. He isn't Adrian. I know. Then why? I cried for the first time since the funeral. Because every time I look at him, I think about 3 people dying because of what my father did. Then I think about my parents dying after his grandfather destroyed everything around us. Hannah said, "That's grief, not Ethan." I know. Then don't make a decision today. I should have listened. But grief does not always make people slower. Sometimes it makes us want to cut everything off as fast as possible. Malcolm had said something else that haunted me. If you tell Ethan everything now, you are placing the sins of both families on his shoulders. He had his own reasons for saying it. He wanted me gone, but I used his words to justify my own fear. I did not tell Ethan. I only told him we were over. He thought I was angry. He apologized, asked what he had done. The more he tried to fix something he did not understand, the more I hurt. Finally, to make him stop looking for a reason, I hired Lucas Ward, a commercial actor, to pretend to be my boyfriend. Lucas arrived in a rented BMW, wore a suit, held my hand. Ethan stood outside my apartment building, staring. "Who is he?" I said. "My boyfriend." He did not believe me. 3 weeks? I knew him before we broke up. That was the sentence that truly broke him. He pulled me aside where Lucas could not hear. "Look at me." I did. "Do you love him?" "Yes." "And me?" "Not anymore." What were those 3 years? I wanted to say, the best thing I ever had. Instead I said, a mistake. Ethan went white. His knees gave out. Not like a proposal, like his body had simply stopped holding him up. He caught my hand. "Evelyn, you're lying to me, aren't you?" I pulled away. "Lucas is waiting." "I can fix it." "There's nothing to fix." "Money?" I hesitated. A mistake. He understood the hesitation the way I wanted him to. "Money?" I said. "Yes." Ethan stared at me for a long time, then stood. He stopped begging. "I understand." I turned away before he saw me crying. 1 week later, Ethan was injured in a car accident caused by distraction and cracked 3 ribs. No one died, but Hannah called me and shouted, "You really think making him hate you hurts less than the truth?" I sat on the bathroom floor. I had no answer. After that, I took time away from school. By the time I returned for graduation, Ethan had officially taken the surname Hayes and had started working with Malcolm. I did not see him. I collected my diploma, left campus, then applied to become a flight attendant, still carrying a hope I was too afraid to name. Maybe one day, among millions of passengers, I would see Ethan once more. I never did. 3 years later, I developed cancer. A little over a year after that, I died. And Ethan still believed he had once been abandoned by a woman who chose money. Until now. After speaking with Malcolm, Ethan hired a private investigator, not a hacker, not some miracle worker who could solve 6 years of family history in 48 hours. A former corporate fraud attorney who worked through public records, court filings, bankruptcy documents, and lawful sources. Ethan did not ask him to find Evelyn first. He said, "I want to know what actually happened to Carter Holdings." 3 weeks later, the first report arrived. It did not fully defend either side. Daniel Carter had, in fact, been involved in concealing and exploiting Adrian Hayes' addiction. Regulators reopened the file after a former employee produced documents. Malcolm Hayes financed the whistleblower's legal fees. 2 creditors connected to the Hayes family office refused extensions at the same time. Another lender withdrew refinancing after a meeting with Hayes representatives. Every action could be defended individually. Together, they showed that Malcolm had done more than release evidence. He had used influence to ensure Carter had no realistic financial rescue once the criminal investigation began. Ethan read everything, then asked, "Did Evelyn know?" "There is no direct proof, but we found a visitor log showing Ms. Carter met Malcolm Hayes 3 days before she ended her relationship with you." Ethan went silent. I stood beside him. The truth had come very close, but one piece was still missing: me. Around that time, my spirit began to fade, not vanish immediately, just become thinner. Sometimes my hands looked more transparent in bright rooms. Sometimes I could not follow Ethan unless he was actively thinking about me. I began to suspect the dead existed partly through memory. No one explained it. There was no manual, only the sense that each day I was becoming lighter. I thought perhaps after the wedding, once Ethan truly entered a new life, I would finally disappear. That would be good. I had stayed too long. 1 week before North Star Foundation's charity gala, Isabel came to Ethan's apartment. She placed the ring box on the table. Ethan looked at it. "What does this mean?" "You know, Isabel, after the reunion, you switched airlines 4 times. You hired an investigator to reopen the Carter story." He said nothing. The wedding planner sent the concept: blue and white, irises. She gave a faint smile. "You never once asked what flowers I liked." Ethan looked down. Isabel said, "I'm not angry at Evelyn." I froze. I can't be angry at a woman I've never met. She continued, "I'm not angry that you haven't forgotten her either. I'm angry that you thought you could get married before dealing with what she still means to you." Ethan said, "I'm sorry." "What would you do if you found her?" He looked at the ring. "See her. And then? I don't know. If she walked into the ceremony, would you still marry me?" Silence. The answer was inside it. Isabel nodded. "Then we're done. The business partnership has nothing to do with this. Legal will handle it. I'm not blowing up a deal over a relationship." She stood. "The public statement will say we decided not to proceed because of personal differences." Ethan said, "Thank you. Don't." She reached the door, then turned. "One piece of free advice." Ethan looked at her. "If you find her, don't make her do anything. Ask." I closed my eyes. If I had understood that years earlier, maybe everything would have been different. The wedding was not publicly canceled immediately because both family offices needed to coordinate the announcement. Outside, people still believed the ceremony was 3 weeks away. Hannah still thought Ethan was about to marry. Ethan simply kept searching. The charity gala took place at a Manhattan hotel. North Star sponsored a cancer research foundation. Atlantic Meridian also had a table. I followed Ethan. My spirit had become so faint that sometimes I could see through my own hand. I thought, maybe tonight is the last time. Ethan was surrounded by investors when an Atlantic Meridian executive came over to greet him. Daniel Foster, the regional president. They spoke briefly about corporate travel. Ethan would normally have moved on. Then he noticed the woman standing beside Daniel. Sophia Grant, former chief purser. The woman who had hugged me in the crew room the day I submitted medical leave. I froze. Sophia looked at Ethan too. She did not recognize him immediately. Ethan asked Daniel, "I had a friend who used to work for Atlantic Meridian." Daniel smiled. "Flight operations or management?" Cabin crew. Daniel gestured toward Sophia. Then you're asking the right person. Sophia worked cabin for more than 20 years. Sophia smiled politely. What's the name? Ethan said. Evelyn Carter. The champagne glass in Sophia's hand trembled. Ethan saw it immediately. Sophia? She looked at him for a long time. You're Ethan Hayes? I closed my eyes. Ethan stopped breathing. She talked about me? Sophia glanced at Daniel. Excuse us. We need a quieter place. They moved into the hallway. Daniel understood he should leave. I'll be inside. Then only Ethan and Sophia remained. I stood between them. Ethan asked. She stopped working more than a year ago. Yes. Where did she go after that? No delay. No artificial cliffhanger. Sophia understood that once the truth had come this far, postponing it would only be cruel. She said, she didn't go anywhere. Ethan's face went still. Sophia continued, Evelyn died. A long silence. Stomach cancer. Stage 4. She died on July 2nd last year. The whiskey glass fell from Ethan's hand. It landed on carpet and did not break. He stared at Sophia. No. She said nothing. No. He repeated it. Sophia cried. I'm sorry. Ethan took a step back. Who are you talking about? Evelyn. No. I visited her in the hospital. No. Ethan. You have the wrong person. Sophia shook her head. I don't. He started asking very quickly. Funeral? Private. Best friend? Hannah Lee. Hannah knew? Yes. Ethan laughed. The sound was empty. Everyone knew. Not everyone. I didn't. Sophia looked at him. Evelyn asked people not to tell you. Why? She thought you'd forgotten her. I stood in front of Ethan. I'm sorry. He could not hear me. Sophia said, near the end, she called someone's name while she was delirious. I couldn't make it out then. Now I think... She stopped. Ethan closed his eyes. Mine. Sophia nodded. He turned away. No shouting. No grabbing anyone. He simply walked fast out of the ballroom. I followed. Mason saw him. Ethan? Carr. Are you okay? Carr. 30 minutes later, Ethan stood outside my old apartment. Sophia had called Hannah first. She opened the door. One look at Ethan's face and she understood. You know? Yes. I stood behind him. Hannah stepped aside. This time, she did not keep the promise. The person the silence had been meant to protect was dead. The person being hurt by the silence was standing in front of her. Ethan entered. The apartment was nearly unchanged. Old medications had long since been disposed of properly, but treatment records remained in a cabinet. An album sat on the shelf. A scarf. My old airline badge. Ethan walked straight into the bedroom. I do not know why. Maybe he remembered that I had always kept important things in the second drawer. He opened it, found the album, picked it up. The first page showed us eating noodles near campus. Then Ethan asleep in the library. Then me kissing his cheek on the Brooklyn Bridge. Then graduation rehearsal. Ethan sat on the floor, held the album, and cried. Not beautifully, not silently. A broken sound in his breathing. Hannah stood in the doorway. I sat in front of him. Don't cry. Hannah took my old phone from her bag, placed it beside Ethan. This belonged to Evelyn. He picked it up. The lock screen was a photograph of Ethan from behind. I had never changed it. The passcode was his birthday. Hannah said. She used it until she went into hospice. Ethan opened notes. A folder. If I'm gone. Inside was the journal I started after diagnosis. The first entry, May 18. The doctor says I need endoscopy and biopsy. I'm still hoping it's just an ulcer. Hannah cried before we even have results, so she's clearly trying to curse me. I keep thinking about Ethan. If he knew, he'd probably lecture me about eating at irregular hours. June 20. Stage 4. There is spread. The doctor says we'll start systemic therapy. I asked how long. He wouldn't give a deadline. I stopped asking. June 19th. Chemo made me vomit all night. I remembered the soup Ethan once made when I had the flu. It was terrible, but I ate all of it. Really unfair that when you're dying, your brain still chooses bad soup as a favorite memory. August 7. Officially stopped flying. 3 years. Never saw Ethan once. I joined a major airline because I thought he'd travel a lot someday. Turns out he was loyal to another carrier. Probability has a sense of humor. October 30. North Star was in the news. Ethan stood in front of the logo. I'm very proud. I don't have the right, but I'm still proud. December 11th. Hannah said I should call him. No. If he still hates me, let him hate me. Hating me is easier than watching me die. February 16th. I saw a picture of Ethan with Isabel Morgan. She's beautiful. I hope she's kind. I zoomed in 5 times. Embarrassing. March 6. Doctor changed treatment. I signed my will. What remains after medical bills, mom's jewelry, and the policy payout will go into a trust for Mia's heart care. Hannah is going to yell at me. April 27th. More pain. I asked the palliative team about better control. I don't want to be brave for no reason. Pain medicine exists for a reason. June 10th. Sophia visited. She said I called someone's name while I was asleep. I didn't tell her. It's not a crush. It's the person I once loved. June 24th. Why did Ethan have to be a Hayes? If he weren't, could we have stayed together? But really, the biggest problem wasn't the surname. It was that I never told him the truth. I decided for him. June 30th. I want to see Ethan once, but I'm too thin now. If he has forgotten me, I shouldn't pull him back. If he hasn't forgotten, then I really shouldn't let him see me like this. July 1. Feels close now. I'll go find Mom and Dad. Hannah, don't cry too long. Mia has to get better. Ethan, I still don't know what to write to you. There was no July 2 entry. That day I was no longer awake enough. Ethan finished reading. His hands were shaking. He asked, Lucas? Hannah knew exactly what he meant. She sat down. An actor. Ethan stared at her. What? Lucas Ward. Evelyn hired him. All the color left Ethan's face. Hired him? To make you believe she was with someone else. Why? Because of the Carters and the Hayeses. Ethan looked at the phone. She knew Malcolm. Yes. Knew her father was connected to the crash? Yes. And she still didn't tell me? No. He laughed through tears. She was insane. Hannah said. She was scared. She didn't have the right. I closed my eyes. He was right. Hannah nodded. Yes, I told her that too. Ethan pressed the phone against his chest. She never loved Lucas? No. Anyone else? No. He closed his eyes. I watched the man I had spent 5 years trying to make hate me. The final lie was dead. Too bad the person who created it had died first. Ethan disappeared from the office for almost 2 weeks. Not disappeared in the sense that nobody knew where he was. Mason knew. The board knew. He still signed what required his signature, but he did not come into the office. did not take interviews, did not appear at events. The wedding announcement was also formally withdrawn by both families. The public statement only said Ethan and Isabel had decided not to proceed with the engagement because of personal differences, while the commercial partnership between their family offices would continue unchanged. Isabel was not turned into a public humiliation. She returned the ring herself. There was no cheating scandal. Nobody was dragged into a marriage that had never truly belonged to them. 13 days later, Ethan went to the Hayes estate. Malcolm was eating breakfast. He looked at his grandson. "So you finally decided to appear?" Ethan sat down. "I know everything." Malcolm put down his coffee. "Everything about what?" "Evelyn is dead." Malcolm's hand stopped. "Only slightly." "Yes." "You knew." "Yes." "How long?" "A few weeks after she died." "And you didn't tell me." "She didn't want you to know." Ethan laughed. "Since when do you respect what she wanted?" Malcolm was silent. "Or was a dead Evelyn simply more convenient for your plans?" "Ethan, you wanted me to marry Isabel." "I wanted you to move on." "You wanted me to move on in the direction you chose." Malcolm struck his cane against the floor. "I lost my son and my grandson, and Evelyn lost her parents. Her father started this." "I know." Malcolm froze. Ethan placed a folder on the table. "Daniel Carter exploited Adrian's addiction." "I know." Malcolm looked at the file. "Good. Then you should understand." "I understand why you hated him." "Exactly. That does not mean I have to inherit your hatred." Malcolm's expression hardened. "Adrian was your father. Biological father. Marcus was your brother. Half-brother, a boy I never met. Still your blood." Ethan looked directly at him. "Blood does not automatically create a relationship." Malcolm's voice rose. "Carter killed your father's family. Daniel Carter contributed to what led to their deaths. That's bad enough. You don't need to simplify it into something cleaner, just so hatred becomes easier." Malcolm gripped the cane. "Are you defending him?" "No." "Then what do you want?" Ethan looked toward the window. "I don't want a man who died 6 years ago deciding who I'm allowed to love." Malcolm's face reddened. "She's dead too." "Yes. Then let her go." "I can't." "You plan to spend your life with a grave." Ethan did not answer. I stood beside him. "Don't." "He could not hear me." Malcolm said, "Morgan's daughter was perfect for you. The engagement is over." Malcolm froze. "What did you say?" "Isabel returned the ring." "Because of Carter?" "Because I wasn't present." Malcolm lifted his cane as if he might strike him, then stopped. "Are you trying to kill me?" "You won't die from this." Malcolm sat back down. After a while, he asked, "So what are you planning to do?" Ethan looked through the glass. "Before I knew Evelyn was dead, I thought if I found her before the ceremony, I would stop the wedding." Malcolm stiffened. "I chose the beach." "What?" "Blue and white. Irises." I closed my eyes. Ethan said, "Not because of Isabel, because those were the things Evelyn once said she wanted." Malcolm stared at him as if he were irrational. Ethan gave a dry laugh. "I also know now that it would have been unfair to Isabel. She understood that before I did." "You plan to drag Evelyn back and make her the bride?" "No." He looked at Malcolm. "I planned to ask her once. If she still said no, I would cancel the wedding and stay alone until I could think clearly. I had no right to force anyone to an altar." I breathed out. He had grown beyond the man who once collapsed at my feet and begged without understanding. Malcolm said, "Even if she were alive, I would never approve. That stopped mattering. I am your grandfather." There's something else that changed what that means. Ethan placed a second folder on the table. Malcolm saw the first page and changed color. Laura Reed, Settlement Agreement. I had never seen that document while alive. Ethan had only found it after reopening Adrian Hayes's history. What he found was uglier than Malcolm's clean family story. Laura Reed, Ethan's mother, had been 23. She worked as an executive assistant at a hotel owned by Hayes Hospitality. Adrian was 35, married, a father. According to letters from Laura's attorney and therapy records she later allowed Ethan to review, Adrian repeatedly used his position and her employment to pressure her into continuing a sexual relationship she was trying to end. There were times she said no. He continued anyway. There was no criminal trial, no conviction. Laura was afraid. When she became pregnant, she found a lawyer. Malcolm learned about it. Instead of investigating his son, he had family counsel negotiate a settlement. Medical bills, a payment, an NDA. Laura had to leave New York. Could not contact the Hayes family. Could not pursue inheritance rights for the child. Could not speak publicly. Malcolm stared at the document. "You don't understand the circumstances," Ethan asked. "What circumstances make this right?" "I was protecting the company." "Exactly. Adrian would have lost everything. So my mother was the one who had to." Malcolm stood abruptly. "I did not force her to sign." "You put a 23-year-old woman across from a legal team and made it clear that if she fought, the company would fight harder." "I paid her fairly." Ethan laughed. "I've heard you use that sentence about too many things. Your father was wrong. I have never denied that. You denied it by converting wrong into a transaction." Malcolm breathed heavily. Ethan said, "The thing that disgusts me most isn't that you hated Daniel Carter." Malcolm looked at him. "It's that you despised Carter for covering up the thing that helped kill your son, while spending your own life covering up what your son did to my mother." The room went silent. I looked at Malcolm. For the first time, he had no answer. Ethan said, "You didn't come looking for me after Marcus died because you missed me." Malcolm said nothing. "You came because there was no heir left. You're my grandson." "Yes, and I was also your grandson for the 20-something years before that." Malcolm sat. He looked older. Ethan pushed a third folder across the table. "This is my resignation from the succession committee." "No. Legal will handle it. North Star has Hayes Capital. Shareholder rights remain exactly what the contracts provide. I'm not stealing from anyone, but the personal guarantees have been refinanced. Family office board nominees will rotate off when their terms end." "You're cutting off your own family." "No." Ethan stood. "I'm cutting off your right to make my decisions for me." Malcolm stared at him. "Because of Evelyn? Because of my mother? Because of Evelyn? Because of me?" Ethan turned to leave. Malcolm called, "Ethan!" He stopped. "I only have you left." Ethan did not turn. "You can have me as a grandson when you learn not to own me." Then he walked out. I followed. A thin layer of snow covered the ground. Ethan got into the car. Did not look back. I sat in the empty passenger seat. "You know," I said, "if I had told you everything back then, maybe you would still have done this." He looked through the windshield. "I know," he whispered. I froze. Not because he heard me. He was talking to memory, but it still felt like an answer. After leaving the estate, Ethan did not destroy the Hayes Group. He did not hand the company to the government. A corporation with employees, lenders, investors, and contracts cannot be thrown away because a family falls apart. He only refused the succession role. Malcolm transferred management to a professional CEO and board. The family trust continued according to law. Some assets later went to charity. Some passed to other beneficiaries. Ethan gradually separated North Star from Hayes' family office influence. It took almost 2 years. Nothing dramatic, just lawyers. Refinancing, board votes, paperwork, the kind of things that make a decision real, and I stayed beside him. The thread between us stopped weakening after Ethan learned I was dead. I did not know why. Maybe because he remembered me too strongly. Maybe because I was not ready to go. I only knew I did not disappear at the charity gala the way I had expected. I remained. For 3 more years. Those 3 years were not 3 years of Ethan sitting beside my grave waiting to die. If they had been, I think I would have been angry before I could be moved by it. He lived. Not perfectly. But he lived. On July 2nd, the first anniversary after learning the truth, Ethan came to the cemetery in Westchester. I was buried beside my parents in the Carter family plot. Not because I had forgiven everything. Only because when I wrote my will, I still wanted to end up in the place that had once been called home. Ethan brought blue irises. He stood in front of my grave for almost an hour. Finally, he said, "I hate you." I sat on the stone bench. I know. Still do. I know. But I miss you more. I smiled. I know that too. He looked at the stone. If I had known you were sick, I would have come. I stayed quiet. I would have come even if you told me not to. I know. No, you didn't. He lowered his head. That was the problem. I did not argue. The dead have a lot of time to realize where they were wrong. Ethan said, "You always thought suffering alone was sacrifice." I looked at my hands. Yes. It wasn't. I know now. He set the flowers down. I'm going to live. I looked at him. That's what I wanted. From then on, he came once a year. Not every day. He did not turn the cemetery into a second home. He kept running North Star. He went to therapy. That surprised me more than any board restructuring. College Ethan used to say, "I can handle my own problems." Now he had a therapist. Once, coming out of an appointment, he told Mason, "Apparently grief doesn't disappear because I'm efficient." Mason answered, "Glad a professional finally told you." I laughed all the way home. He did not get back together with Isabel. They still greeted each other at events. The commercial partnership between North Star and the Morgan Family Fund continued according to contract. Isabel later dated someone else. Nobody became the villain. Malcolm changed more slowly. A year after their confrontation, he sent Ethan a letter. It was not a perfect apology. He still tried to explain that he had acted for the family. But near the end was one sentence. "I should have protected Laura from Adrian, not Adrian from consequences." Ethan read it twice. Did not call. 3 months later, he went to see Malcolm. Their relationship did not become warm again, but it stopped being completely severed. Malcolm was almost 90 by then. His health declined quickly. He died during the second winter. Ethan attended the funeral. He did not speak. He did not accept the chairman role that earlier trust documents had once anticipated. Hayes Group continued under professional management. Some family assets moved into a charitable trust under Malcolm's will. Ethan accepted personal distributions that his lawyers determined would not create governance control. while formally disclaiming the voting interests through the estate process. Ethan's mother, Laura, was not alive to see any of this. She had died 4 years before Ethan learned I was dead. After Ethan returned to the Hayes family, Laura refused to move to New York. She stayed in Vermont. Her health had long been fragile because of chronic heart disease. A year later, she suffered a major stroke and died. Malcolm used to say she had died from grief. That was simply the way a man who liked simple explanations described something he did not want to understand. Ethan still visited his mother's grave every year. After discovering the old settlement, he had the confidentiality restrictions lifted where Laura's estate legally could, and worked with her attorney to preserve the real history in a sealed record. No public scandal, no using his mother's trauma as public relations, just no more pretending it had never happened. I watched Ethan do all the things I had been too afraid to do years earlier. Open the files. Name what had happened. Refuse to inherit his father's guilt. Refuse to inherit his grandfather's hatred. Refuse to deny the person he loved because of what her family had done. I thought, you were braver than I was. In the second year after learning I was dead, Ethan started getting headaches. At first, they only came after long workdays. He assumed migraines. Then one morning, during a meeting, he could not find the word he wanted. Only for a few seconds. Mason made him see a doctor immediately. An MRI showed a mass in the left frontal lobe. Biopsy. Glioblastoma. I stood in the room when the doctor told him. It felt like watching my own life repeat. Ethan did not ask. How long? He asked. Surgery? The doctor explained. We can attempt maximal safe resection. After that, radiation with temozolomide. We'll also review molecular markers. Ethan nodded. He did not refuse treatment. He did not say he was tired of living. He did not treat illness as a ticket to reach me. He underwent surgery. Radiation. Chemotherapy. For a while, the scans looked stable. North Star appointed the COO as interim chief executive, then made the transition permanent once Ethan knew he could no longer guarantee long-term availability. The board created a succession plan. Employees were informed only to the extent necessary. He did not cling to the CEO title simply because the company had his name attached to its history. 11 months after diagnosis, the tumor progressed. Second-line treatment did not work. The doctor told him they needed to start shifting the goal toward quality of life. Ethan listened. I stood beside him. He left the hospital and sat in the car for a long time. Then he drove to the cemetery. Evelyn. I looked up. He stared at my grave. I'm not doing this to follow you. I almost laughed. I know. I tried treatment. I know. I still want to live. I know. But this time it doesn't look like I get the final vote. I sat beside him. He said, I hate that sentence. I hated it too. From that point, Ethan began arranging the things dying people need to arrange. Advance directive, healthcare proxy, will. North Star shares moved into trusts with clear governance. Part of his estate went to the Laura Reed Survivors Fund, supporting legal services for employees facing workplace coercion. Part went to gastric cancer research. Part went to an Atlantic Meridian medical assistance program for cabin crew. When his lawyer asked about burial preference, Ethan said, Westchester. The Hayes family plot? No. He gave the cemetery name. Next to Evelyn Carter. The lawyer looked at him. Adjacent plot? Check availability. The Carter family plot had an unused section beside mine that no direct relative planned to use. The cemetery trustee approved transferring burial rights to Ethan in exchange for a payment into the maintenance trust. Nobody dug me up. There was simply a place beside me reserved for him. Hannah knew. She cried when Ethan told her. "You're really going to be buried beside her?" Ethan said. "If she hates it, it'll be too late." Hannah laughed through tears. "She'll yell at you." "I can take it." During the final 3 months, Ethan received hospice care at home. Nothing dramatic. A nurse. Pain management. Mason visited. Hannah brought Mia. Mia was 9 then, doing well after her heart procedure. She sat beside Ethan's bed. "Uncle Ethan, where is Aunt Evelyn?" I froze. Ethan looked at her. "I don't know. Mom says she's in the sky." "Maybe." Mia thought about it. "If you see her, tell her Mom still cries," Hannah said. "Mia?" Ethan smiled. "I'll tell her." I sat beside the bed. "I'll tell Hannah myself." On the final night, Ethan slept most of the time. Around 3 in the morning, he opened his eyes. The nurse was in the next room. I stood by the window. Ethan looked directly toward me. I do not know whether he truly saw me. He whispered, "Ev," then gave a faint smile. "Evelyn." I stepped closer. "I'm here." He closed his eyes, exhaled, and did not breathe again. 3 years after the day he learned I had died, Ethan Hayes died at 36. Not by suicide. Not because he refused life. Not because love killed him. An illness took him, the way illness had taken me. I hated that. But at least this time, nobody could turn death into a romantic choice. Ethan chose life until his body stopped giving him the option. On the day of the funeral, I stood beside my grave. The space beside it had already been opened. I had known this was coming. I still panicked. When Ethan's casket arrived, I rushed toward it as if I were alive. No. No one heard. "Ethan, wake up," I cried. Strange. I had followed him through diagnosis, surgery, hospice. I knew exactly where this ended. Knowing did not make it hurt less. The casket was lowered. Mason stood near Hannah. Mia held a single iris. There were no press cameras. North Star held a separate memorial for employees. This funeral was only family and friends. Before leaving, Hannah placed her hand on my headstone. "Now the 2 of you can deal with each other." I nearly laughed through the tears. Earth began to fall. I knelt beside the grave. "Ethan, don't!" A voice behind me said, "You still talk too much." I froze, turned. Ethan stood there. No hospital gown. No funeral suit. Just a white shirt and black trousers, like an ordinary day in his late 20s. Not exactly young, not old. Simply Ethan. He looked at his hands. Interesting. I stood. "You?" Ethan looked at me. For the first time in 4 years of being dead, I could touch someone. I rushed at him. My hand hit his chest. It did not pass through. I struck him. "Idiot. That hurts." "How can a ghost hurt?" "Then why are you hitting me?" I cried. Ethan pulled me into his arms. Tight. No empty space between us. I had imagined this moment would be completely happy. Instead, the first thing I asked was, "Can you go back?" Ethan shook his head. "No. Try." "You think this is an elevator?" "Ethan." His voice softened. "I tried to live. I know. I didn't refuse treatment. I know. I didn't do anything to myself. I know. I still wanted to live." I lowered my head. I know. He stroked my hair. Then don't be angry with me. I cried for a while, then asked, Malcolm? Died last year. Laura? Mom died long before I learned you were gone. I nodded. Hayes Group? Professional board. Trust structure. Nobody burned down a company over family drama. I laughed. Can you read my thoughts? No, I just know what you'd ask. North Star? Mason and the board have it. I planned the transition. Isabel? Married someone else. Good. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Jealous? Ghosts still have dignity. He laughed. We sat on the grass. The sky slowly darkened. An airplane crossed far overhead. I pointed. Atlantic Meridian? Ethan looked up. From that distance, you can see the logo? I used to be a flight attendant, not an air traffic controller. You're still annoying. You still like me. I leaned against his shoulder. After a while, Ethan asked, if you could go back to the day you learned our families were enemies, what would you do? I did not need to think. Tell you, even knowing your father was responsible for part of it. Yes. Even knowing Malcolm helped destroy the Carter Empire. Yes. Even if I might hate your father. You would have had that right. Even if I might have left you. I looked at him. You would have had that right too. Ethan nodded. Finally. Took me an entire life. You died young, slow learner. I shoved him. He laughed. I asked, what about you? What? If you could go back? Ethan thought. I would look for you sooner. After I claimed I had a boyfriend? Yes. You'd stalk me? No. Then what? I'd ask Hannah. She wouldn't tell you. Then Sophia. I wasn't sick yet. Then an investigator. I laughed. You can't due diligence a relationship. Apparently that's why I failed. We sat quietly. I thought about all the years we lost. I used to believe fate destroyed us. Not entirely. Our families created a debt. My father did something wrong. Malcolm retaliated. Adrian harmed Laura. Malcolm covered it up. All true. But inside the damage adults created, Ethan and I still had choices. I chose silence. I chose to hire Lucas. I chose to decide that hatred would be easier for Ethan than truth. Ethan chose to trust his wound for too long. Chose not to search for me during those first years because pride was easier than uncertainty. Later, he repaired his part. I only repaired mine after it was too late. Maybe that was why I stayed. Not because ghosts must wait for lovers, because there was one thing I needed to understand before leaving. Love is not protecting someone from every possible pain. It is not carrying the pain for them either. It is telling the truth and trusting that they are strong enough to decide what to do with it. Years ago, I became a flight attendant because I hoped I might accidentally see Ethan among millions of passengers. 3 years flying. Never happened. After I died, he switched to my airline to search for me. Still too late. We spent too long crossing the same sky at the wrong times. Now there was no airport ahead, no gate, no boarding announcement. No airline. Ethan stood, held out his hand. Ready? I looked at it. Where are we going? Don't know. You don't have a plan? First time. I took his hand. Then go. Behind us, 2 stones stood side by side. Evelyn Marie Carter. Ethan Laura Hayes. Ethan's stone did not say founder, not billionaire, not heir. Only his dates and one line he had chosen himself. He finally learned to ask. I read it. That's unbearably self-important. Ethan looked at the stone. My lawyer said the line was weird. He was right. You understand it. Unfortunately, I shook my head, then walked with him. This time, neither of us decided for the other. This time, we chose together.